The worst kind of enemy is the one who knows exactly how to save you. Claire Bennett's hands trembled around the crystal champagne glass as the entire ballroom turned to stare at her. Hundreds of Manhattan's wealthiest people had gone silent the second she stepped onto the stage. The gold lights above the charity gala reflected off diamond necklaces, $1,000 watches, and polished marble floors, but Claire only saw one person in the room. Ethan Cross. The billionaire stood near the back of the ballroom in a perfectly tailored black suit, one hand casually resting in his pocket, while the other held a glass of bourbon he barely touched. Calm, untouchable, like a man who had never once heard the word consequences in his entire life. Claire swallowed hard and leaned toward the microphone. 3 years ago, she said, her voice shaking despite every attempt to stay composed. My father lost everything after Cross Holdings acquired his company. Quiet whispers spread instantly across the ballroom. Ethan didn't move, didn't blink. My father spent 22 years building Bennett tech from a 2-car garage in Ohio, Claire continued. And within 6 months of Ethan Cross stepping into our lives, my family lost our home, our savings, and nearly each other. Her chest tightened as cameras slowly turned toward Ethan. She had imagined this moment for months. The humiliation, the revenge. The moment Manhattan's golden billionaire would finally be exposed in front of the same elite crowd that worshipped him like royalty. But Ethan only stared at her with those cold blue eyes that somehow made her angrier every time she looked at him. Because he didn't look guilty. He looked tired. Say something, Claire snapped suddenly. Or is silence part of the billionaire strategy too? A few nervous laughs echoed through the room. Ethan slowly placed his bourbon glass onto a nearby table before walking toward the stage. Every expensive shoe in the ballroom seemed frozen against the marble floor as he approached her. 6'3", broad shoulders, dark blonde hair slightly messy like he'd run his hand through it too many times tonight. The kind of face magazines called devastatingly handsome. Claire called it infuriating. Ethan stepped onto the stage beside her, close enough for her to catch the scent of cedarwood and expensive cologne. Then he leaned toward the microphone. You really think you know what happened to your father? He asked quietly. Claire's jaw tightened. I know enough. Ethan looked at her for a long second, and something unreadable crossed his face. Pain maybe. Regret. Then it disappeared just as fast. No, he said softly. You really don't. The room exploded with whispers again, but Claire barely heard them. Because for one terrifying second, she almost believed him. Ethan reached into his suit pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. Your father signed this himself, he said. 2 weeks before the acquisition. Claire snatched the paper from his hand. Her stomach dropped the second she recognized her father's signature at the bottom. What is this? She whispered. Ethan's expression darkened. The truth. Before Claire could respond, the ballroom lights suddenly flickered once. Then twice. A strange murmur rolled through the crowd. Ethan's entire body went still beside her. Not nervous. Alert. Like a man hearing something nobody else could hear. Then his eyes snapped toward the massive glass windows overlooking Manhattan. Claire followed his gaze just as headlights screamed across the street below far too fast. Ethan grabbed her wrist instantly. We need to leave. Right now. Claire yanked her arm back. Don't touch me. Claire. His voice turned deadly serious. Move. The next sound shattered the entire ballroom into chaos. A deafening boom echoed outside as glass rattled violently around them. People screamed. Champagne glasses crashed onto marble floors. Somewhere downstairs, car alarms began blaring across the Manhattan street. Claire stumbled backward in shock, heart slamming against her ribs, while Ethan moved in front of her automatically, like instinct had taken over his body before his mind could catch up. Then the fire alarms started ringing. Red emergency lights flooded the ballroom. And for the first time all night, Ethan Cross looked genuinely afraid. Get down. Ethan's voice cut through the screaming ballroom with terrifying calm as another burst of alarms echoed across the hotel. Claire barely had time to react before his hand wrapped around her wrist again. This time she did not fight him. The crowd shoved toward the exits in a wave of panic while red emergency lights flashed against crystal chandeliers overhead. Expensive heels slipped across marble floors. Security guards shouted directions nobody listened to. Somewhere downstairs, sirens grew louder by the second. Ethan pulled Claire behind him through the chaos, his grip firm enough to guide her but careful enough not to hurt her. What is happening? Claire demanded breathlessly as they pushed through the side hallway near the ballroom kitchen. Ethan looked over his shoulder once before answering. Someone is trying to scare me. Claire let out a sharp laugh. Scare you? Your entire building just shook. Exactly. His jaw tightened. If they wanted real damage, trust me, you would know. That answer only made her heart beat faster. The hallway lights flickered above them as Ethan led her toward a private elevator hidden behind a black security door. Claire suddenly stopped walking. No, Ethan turned sharply. What? I am not getting into a private elevator alone with you after everything you have done. Even now, standing in the middle of chaos, Ethan somehow looked offended instead of angry. Claire, this is not the time. Then tell me the truth for once. Her voice cracked harder than she wanted. Did you destroy my father's company or not? For a second, the noise around them seemed to disappear completely. Ethan stared at her like he was trying to decide something dangerous. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice. Your father was already in trouble before I ever walked into his office. Claire shook her head instantly. That is a lie. I wish it was. The elevator doors slid open behind him with a soft metallic sound. Ethan glanced down the hallway again, his expression growing darker. You can hate me later, he said quietly. Right now you need to trust me. Claire almost refused. She should have refused. Every instinct in her body screamed that Ethan Cross was the reason her family lost everything. But then she noticed something strange. His hands. They were steady. Completely steady. Meanwhile, every security guard in the building looked nervous out of their minds. Ethan was not afraid for himself. He was afraid for her. That realization unsettled her more than the alarms. Ethan stepped into the elevator first and held the door open. 5 seconds, Claire. She stared at him another moment before finally walking inside. The elevator doors closed immediately. Silence replaced the screaming ballroom outside. Claire crossed her arms tightly while Ethan pressed a security code into the panel. Instead of descending, the elevator moved upward. Higher. Faster. Where are we going? My penthouse. Claire let out a disbelieving laugh. Of course the billionaire has a panic room in the sky. Ethan did not smile. You joke when you are nervous. And you avoid answering questions when you are guilty. His eyes flicked toward her then away again. The elevator finally stopped after what felt like forever. When the doors opened, Claire forgot how to breathe for a second. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows revealed the entire Manhattan skyline, glowing beneath the stormy night sky. The penthouse looked less like an apartment and more like a private luxury hotel suspended above the city. White marble floors, soft gold lighting, massive modern fireplaces built into dark stone walls. Everything elegant, expensive, cold. Ethan loosened his tie slightly as he walked inside, but Claire stayed near the elevator. You live here alone? She asked before she could stop herself. Ethan paused briefly. Mostly. Something about that answer felt lonelier than she expected. Before Claire could say anything else, Ethan crossed the room toward a hidden bar cabinet and pulled out a small black security tablet. The second he turned it on, multiple surveillance camera feeds filled the screen. Claire's stomach dropped. Men in dark jackets were moving through the hotel lobby downstairs, while hotel security scrambled around them. Ethan muttered something under his breath. What? Claire asked. His face hardened instantly. They found us faster than I expected. Claire's pulse spiked. Who found us? Ethan slowly looked up at her. That depends, he said quietly. How much did your father tell you before he disappeared? Claire felt the air leave her lungs. My father is not missing. Ethan stayed silent for half a second too long. That was enough. No. Claire whispered, shaking her head slowly. No. He called my mother last week. Ethan looked back down at the security screen in his hand. Did he speak to her directly? Claire opened her mouth, then stopped. Her mother had said the connection sounded strange. Quick. Rushed. Claire suddenly remembered her mother crying in the kitchen afterward, insisting everything was fine while twisting her wedding ring around trembling fingers. Ethan exhaled slowly. That is what I thought. Claire's chest tightened with panic she could not control. Tell me what is going on. Ethan set the tablet down on the marble counter before finally facing her fully. Your father disappeared 48 hours ago. Stop saying disappeared. Her voice cracked sharply. You do not get to walk into my life and suddenly tell me my father vanished. Claire. No. She stepped backward from him. You have spent 3 years destroying my family, and now you expect me to trust you because some rich people downstairs are panicking? Ethan's expression darkened instantly. You think this is about rich people? He walked toward the massive glass windows overlooking Manhattan. Police lights flashed across the streets nearly 80 floors below them while rain streaked against the glass. Your father found something he was never supposed to see. Claire folded her arms tightly across her chest. What does that even mean? Ethan stared out at the city for a long moment before answering. 5 years ago, several technology companies across the country started collapsing under mysterious circumstances. Claire frowned. Including Bennett Tech. Yes. Ethan turned back toward her. At first I thought it was normal corporate corruption. Hostile takeovers. Financial manipulation. The usual ugly billionaire nonsense everyone expects. Claire let out a bitter laugh. Funny hearing that from you. He ignored the comment. Then I realized the same names kept appearing behind every deal. Claire's stomach twisted uneasily. What names? Ethan's jaw flexed slightly. People powerful enough that most companies stay quiet instead of fighting back. And my father fought back. Your father was smarter than most people gave him credit for. Ethan walked toward a locked drawer built into the kitchen island and entered another security code. Claire watched carefully as he pulled out a thin folder filled with papers. He handed it to her without speaking. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside were dozens of photographs, financial records, and printed emails. She recognized her father immediately in several pictures leaving office buildings with men she had never seen before. One photo made her freeze completely. Her father looked terrified. Claire stared at the image. When was this taken? 6 months before Bennett Tech collapsed. Ethan's voice softened slightly. That was the first time your father contacted me. Claire looked up sharply. What? Ethan nodded once. He asked for help. The room suddenly felt too small. That is impossible. I still have the original emails. Ethan's blue eyes locked onto hers. Your father knew someone was targeting his company long before I bought it. Claire shook her head over and over like refusing reality could somehow change it. No, my father hated you. Something painful flickered across Ethan's face. He did it first. Claire looked back down at the photo in her hand. Her father's frightened expression no longer matched the story she had believed for years. Why would he trust you? She whispered. Ethan hesitated before answering. Because I was the only person willing to lose money helping him instead of profiting from him. Claire stared at him in stunned silence. The billionaire she spent 3 years blaming for everything suddenly sounded less like a villain and more like a man carrying secrets too heavy to hide anymore. Then another thought hit her instantly. If my father asked you for help, she swallowed hard. Why do we still lose everything? Ethan's eyes darkened again. Because I was too late. Silence filled the penthouse as thunder rolled outside over Manhattan. Claire slowly closed the folder in her hands. For the first time since meeting Ethan Cross, uncertainty began replacing anger. And somehow that terrified her even more. Suddenly, Ethan's security tablet beeped sharply against the marble counter. Ethan grabbed it immediately. His face turned cold within seconds. What? Claire asked nervously. Ethan looked directly at her. Someone just entered your mother's apartment building. Claire's face went completely pale. My mother. She rushed toward Ethan so fast the folder nearly slipped from her hands. Call her right now. Ethan was already moving. He tapped a command across the security tablet while grabbing his phone from the counter. Rain hammered against the massive penthouse windows as tension filled every inch of the room. Claire paced beside the marble island, wrapping her arms tightly around herself while the phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. No answer. Come on, she whispered desperately. Ethan ended the call immediately and dialed another number. Marcus, I need eyes on East 81st Street now. His voice became colder, sharper, like someone used to giving orders people obeyed instantly. Claire Bennett's building. Send me live updates every 60 seconds. Claire stared at him. You already have people watching my mother? Ethan looked at her carefully. I have had people watching your mother for 8 months. Her stomach dropped. That is insane. That is why she is still safe. Before Claire could respond, Ethan crossed the penthouse quickly and opened another hidden cabinet built into the wall. Inside were passports, cash envelopes, and several secure phones organized with disturbing precision. Claire blinked in disbelief. What is this? Preparation. Ethan handed her one of the phones. If anything happens tonight, this connects directly to me and nobody else. Claire looked down at the device in her hand. You seriously live like this? Ethan gave a humorless smile. You do not build a $10 billion company without making dangerous enemies. Claire shook her head slowly. This is not normal. Neither is someone targeting your family. Silence fell again. Claire hated how calm he stayed during chaos. Hated how every movement felt controlled while her own thoughts spiraled further out of control by the second. Ethan suddenly froze as a message appeared on the tablet screen. Claire saw his expression shift instantly. What happened? Ethan turned the screen toward her. A live camera feed showed the front entrance of her mother's apartment building. Two men in dark jackets stood near the lobby desk speaking to the overnight doorman. Claire's pulse exploded. Who are they? Ethan zoomed in slightly on the screen. Not police. How can you tell? Because police do not hide their faces from security cameras. Claire felt sick. My mother is upstairs alone. Ethan grabbed his coat from the back of a chair immediately. We are leaving. Claire blinked. What? I am getting you and your mother out of Manhattan tonight. No. Ethan stopped midway through putting on his coat. No. Claire stepped closer, anger suddenly overpowering fear. You do not get to control my life because you suddenly decided to tell me half the truth. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Half the truth. You keep talking in riddles. Her voice rose again. Dangerous people. Secret deals. Missing fathers. You expect me to trust you while refusing to tell me who any of these people actually are. Ethan looked exhausted suddenly. Not angry. Just tired in a way that made him seem older than 34. Because the less you know, the safer you are. Claire laughed bitterly. I stopped being safe the second I met you. That hit harder than she expected. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly before he looked away toward the rain-covered skyline. You think I do not know that, he said quietly. Claire opened her mouth, but no words came out. Ethan rarely raised his voice. Somehow that made moments like this worse. More honest. More dangerous. A soft buzzing sound interrupted them. Ethan checked the tablet again. His face darkened immediately. What now? Claire asked nervously. Ethan enlarged another camera feed from outside her mother's apartment floor. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Her mother stood outside her apartment. Door in a pale blue sweater, holding grocery bags while speaking nervously to one of the strange men. Mom, Claire whispered. Ethan grabbed his phone instantly. She cannot go inside that apartment. Claire's heart pounded violently as Ethan dialed again. But before the call connected, the man near her mother suddenly looked directly up toward the hallway camera like he knew somebody was watching. Then the screen went black. We are leaving now. Ethan's voice was calm again, but Claire could hear the urgency underneath it this time. The black security screen reflected against his sharp features as he grabbed his car keys from the counter. Claire still stared at the dead camera feed, unable to breathe properly. My mother. Ethan moved closer immediately. Listen to me carefully. Panic helps nobody. Claire looked up at him with glassy eyes. You said she was being watched. You said she was safe. She was. His jaw tightened. Something changed tonight. Thunder rolled across Manhattan again as Ethan slipped his coat on and handed Claire a second one from the chair nearby. She almost refused it out of instinct, but the shaking in her hands gave her away. Ethan noticed immediately but pretended not to. The underground garage is secure, he said while walking toward another hidden elevator near the back of the penthouse. We can reach your mother in under 15 minutes if traffic is clear. Claire followed him automatically now, her mind moving too fast to process anything completely. Who are these people? She asked quietly. Ethan pressed the elevator button. A private financial network. That sounds fake. I wish it was. The elevator doors opened. Ethan motioned for her to step inside first this time. Claire hesitated only briefly before entering. The doors closed smoothly behind them, sealing them into another heavy silence. Ethan typed a code into the elevator panel that Claire noticed was different from before. There are different security levels in your own building. There are different threats in my life. Claire leaned against the mirrored wall slightly, exhausted already even though the night felt nowhere near over. How long have you known? My father was in danger. Ethan kept his eyes on the elevator display. Almost 3 years. Claire stared at him in disbelief. 3 years? Your father contacted me 6 months before Bennett Tech collapsed. And you never told us? Ethan finally looked at her. Your father made me promise. Claire let out a bitter laugh. You expect me to believe my father trusted Ethan Cross enough to keep secrets with him? No, his expression softened unexpectedly. I expect you to believe your father loved you enough to hide things that could put you in danger. The elevator reached the underground level with a soft chime. When the doors opened, Claire froze again. The garage looked more like a private luxury showroom than parking. Matte black SUVs lined one side, while security cameras rotated quietly overhead. Ethan walked toward a sleek, dark Aston Martin parked near the center. Even under the dim lighting, the car looked painfully expensive. Claire crossed her arms tightly. You really are the most billionaire person I have ever met. For the first time all night, Ethan almost smiled. Almost. You say that like it is a disease. Maybe it is. Ethan opened the passenger door for her anyway. Claire hated that small gesture more than the arrogance sometimes, because it felt genuine. Once inside the car, warm air surrounded her immediately as soft instrumental music played quietly through hidden speakers. Ethan started the engine and pulled smoothly out of the garage into the rain-soaked Manhattan streets. The city outside looked completely different now. Sirens flashed across wet pavement while news helicopters circled several blocks away near the Hotel Gala. Claire watched people hurrying beneath umbrellas on crowded sidewalks, completely unaware that her entire world had just shattered upstairs in a penthouse above the city. Ethan drove with one hand on the wheel, focused and silent. Claire glanced sideways at him. Why were you really at that gala tonight? Ethan did not answer immediately. Public appearances keep investors calm. That is not what I meant. He exhaled quietly. I knew your father might try contacting you there. Claire turned toward him fully. What? He sent an encrypted message yesterday mentioning the event. Ethan's grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Then he disappeared before I could reach him again. Claire's chest tightened painfully. You were saying my father wanted to see me? I think he wanted to warn you. Rain streaked harder against the windshield now as they crossed the Upper East Side. Claire suddenly noticed Ethan glance into the rearview mirror twice in less than 10 seconds. What? She asked nervously. Ethan's voice became dangerously calm. Do not turn around immediately. Claire's pulse spiked anyway. Ethan. Black SUV. 2 cars behind us since Midtown. Claire slowly looked toward the side mirror despite his warning. A dark vehicle stayed perfectly behind them through traffic. Her stomach dropped. Are they following us? Ethan pressed slightly harder on the accelerator. Yes. Claire gripped the edge of her seat. What do we do? Ethan's blue eyes stayed locked on the rain-covered road ahead. We find out whether they want me. His voice lowered slightly. Or you. Claire's fingers tightened around the leather seat as rain blurred the Manhattan streets outside. The black SUV stayed behind them through every turn like a shadow refusing to disappear. Ethan remained calm beside her, one hand steady on the wheel while the city lights reflected sharply across his blue eyes. Claire could not understand how somebody under this much pressure could look so controlled. Lose them, she whispered. Ethan glanced at the mirror again. That would confirm we are scared. We are scared. You are scared. His voice softened slightly. I am focused. Claire stared at him. Even now, part of her still wanted to hate him. But hatred became difficult when the man beside her kept putting himself between her and danger without hesitation. Ethan suddenly turned off the main avenue and guided the Aston Martin down a quieter side street lined with old brownstones and dim cafe lights. The SUV followed immediately. Claire's heartbeat jumped. Ethan. I know. His jaw tightened slightly. Too consistent now to be coincidence. The car moved through the rain-slick streets smoothly before. Ethan reached toward the dashboard and pressed a hidden button. Claire blinked as the navigation screen instantly changed into a live city map filled with moving dots and traffic routes. Your car has surveillance software? Ethan gave a dry smile. My insurance company worries about kidnapping. Claire almost laughed despite herself, but the tension in the car swallowed the sound before it escaped. Ethan studied the screen for another second before making a sudden sharp turn into an underground parking entrance beneath a luxury apartment tower. The black SUV drove past the entrance without slowing down. Claire let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. Did we lose them? Ethan parked the car, but did not answer immediately. Instead, he checked several camera feeds on the dashboard. Temporarily, Claire looked around the empty garage nervously. Where are we? One of my buildings. How many buildings do you own? Too many. Ethan stepped out first and walked around to open her door again. Claire hated that she noticed things like that now. Small things. Careful things. the kind of details villains usually forgot. The garage elevator opened directly into a private apartment on the 23rd floor. Claire stopped the second she entered. Unlike Ethan's penthouse, this place felt lived in. Warm lighting, dark wood shelves, old records stacked beside a vintage turntable, a gray sweater tossed carelessly over the back of a couch. The apartment smelled faintly like coffee and cedarwood instead of polished marble and expensive silence. Claire looked around slowly. You actually stay here? Ethan removed his coat carefully. Sometimes when I want nobody to find me. Claire walked toward the massive windows overlooking the rainy city below. You have an entire hidden apartment for hiding from people. You say that like your life has been normal tonight. Fair point. Ethan moved into the kitchen area and opened the refrigerator before pulling out bottled water. Claire watched him quietly as he loosened the sleeves of his dress shirt. For the first time since the gala, he looked exhausted. Not billionaire polished. Just tired. Human. Ethan handed her the water bottle. Their fingers brushed briefly. Claire immediately looked away. Thank you, she muttered. Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter across from her. Your mother is still not answering calls. Claire's stomach dropped again instantly. Ethan noticed the panic return to her face and spoke before she could spiral completely. But my security contact confirmed she left the apartment building safely 20 minutes ago. Claire blinked. What? Someone escorted her out through the back in trance before those men reached her floor. Who? Ethan hesitated. I do not know yet. Claire stared at him in disbelief. You are telling me strangers are following my mother through Manhattan, and you do not know who is helping her? Ethan looked frustrated for the first time all night. That is exactly what I am telling you. Silence settled heavily between them again. Rain tapped softly against the windows while distant sirens echoed far below the building. Claire slowly sat down on the edge of the couch, exhaustion finally crashing into her all at once. Ethan watched her carefully from across the room. You should try to rest for an hour. Claire laughed weakly. You think I can sleep right now? Ethan walked closer, stopping just a few feet away. Claire. His voice lowered gently. You have been running on adrenaline for hours. She looked up at him. And you? Ethan's expression shifted slightly. I stopped sleeping normally a long time ago. Something about the honesty in that answer hit her harder than expected. Claire studied him quietly. The expensive suit, the tired eyes, the constant alertness in every movement. Suddenly, Ethan did not look like the powerful billionaire from magazine covers anymore. He looked lonely. Then Claire noticed something strange resting on the bookshelf behind him. A small silver chain with a tiny moon-shaped pendant hanging from it. Her breath caught instantly. Wait. Ethan turned. Claire stood slowly from the couch, staring at the necklace. Why do you have that? Ethan followed her gaze toward the shelf. For the first time since she met him, Ethan Cross looked genuinely caught off guard. Claire walked slowly toward the bookshelf, unable to take her eyes off the silver moon pendant hanging beside Ethan's records. Her chest tightened painfully with recognition. That necklace. Her voice came out softer than expected. It belonged to me. Ethan stayed completely still near the kitchen counter. The silence between them suddenly felt heavier than anything else that had happened tonight. Claire reached for the pendant carefully, her fingers brushing the cool silver surface. I lost this 3 years ago. Ethan lowered his eyes briefly before looking back at her. I know. Claire turned around sharply. Why do you have it? Rain continued tapping against the windows while distant thunder rolled over Manhattan again. Ethan looked like he was debating how much truth to give her this time. Claire crossed her arms tightly. No more half answers. Ethan finally walked toward her slowly. You dropped it outside a coffee shop in Brooklyn. Claire frowned instantly. What? 3 years ago. His voice stayed quiet. It was snowing. You were carrying 2 cups of coffee and arguing on the phone with somebody about hospital bills. Claire's heartbeat slowed strangely. She remembered that day. Her mother's medical insurance had just changed after Bennett Tech collapsed. Claire had spent weeks juggling freelance design jobs, trying to help pay expenses. But Ethan being there made no sense. You were there? Ethan nodded once. You dropped the necklace while trying to get into a cab. Claire stared at him in disbelief. Why would you even remember that? Ethan gave a small, humorless laugh. Because you turned around and yelled at the taxi driver for almost splashing an old woman with dirty snow. Claire blinked. The memory came rushing back instantly. A freezing February afternoon. Wet boots. Gray skies. Stress crushing her from every direction. You were watching me? Ethan shook his head immediately. No. I was walking out of a meeting across the street. Claire looked down at the pendant in her hand again. Then why keep this? Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. Because I tried to give it back. Claire looked up sharply. Ethan walked toward the windows, his hands sliding into his pockets though the memory itself made him uncomfortable. You disappeared into the subway crowd before I could reach you. Claire could barely process what she was hearing anymore. So you just kept it? Ethan stared out at the rain-covered skyline. I do not usually keep things. The honesty in that sentence hit harder than she expected. Claire studied him carefully now. The guarded billionaire who seemed impossible to read suddenly looked strangely vulnerable, standing there beneath the soft apartment lights. You did not even know me, she whispered. Ethan looked back at her slowly. I remembered you anyway. The room went completely still. Claire's pulse betrayed her instantly. She hated that it did. Hated that the same man she spent years blaming for her family's collapse could say one quiet sentence and make her heart feel unsteady. Ethan noticed her expression shift and immediately stepped back emotionally again. Like instinct. Like he regretted letting her see anything real. It does not matter, he said calmly. Tonight is about keeping you alive. Claire swallowed hard. You keep saying things like that. Ethan frowned slightly. Like what? Like I matter to you. Ethan looked at her for a long second without answering. Then his secure phone suddenly rang across the kitchen counter, shattering the tension between them instantly. Ethan grabbed it immediately. Marcus. Claire watched his expression darken within seconds. Where? Silence. Ethan's shoulders stiffened. How many? Another pause. Then Ethan closed his eyes briefly before answering. Understood. He ended the call slowly. Claire's stomach dropped again. What happened? Ethan looked directly at her. Your mother never made it home. Fear slammed through Claire instantly. What are you talking about? Ethan walked toward the security tablet on the counter and pulled up another live location map. The car that picked her up stopped transmitting 30 minutes ago near the Brooklyn Bridge. Claire's breathing became uneven. Who took her? Ethan hesitated just long enough to terrify her completely. Claire, who? She demanded. Ethan's voice lowered carefully. The driver who picked up your mother. Works for someone named Victor Hale. Claire frowned. I do not know that name. Ethan's expression turned cold in a way she had never seen before. You should. He pulled another file onto the screen. A photo appeared instantly. Older man. Expensive gray suit. Sharp silver hair. Calm smile that somehow felt dangerous even through a photograph. Claire's blood turned to ice the second she recognized him. No, she whispered. Ethan watched her carefully. You know him? Claire slowly backed away from the screen. He was at my father's retirement party. Her voice trembled now. Dad called him family. Ethan's eyes hardened instantly. Victor Hale is the man who destroyed Bennett Tech. Claire felt like the floor disappeared beneath her. No, she whispered again, staring at Victor Hale's photo on the screen. Memories crashed into her all at once. Christmas parties at luxury hotels. Expensive birthday gifts sent to their house every year. Victor laughing beside her father at company dinners while calling Claire kiddo, like family. Ethan watched the realization spread across her face carefully. Your father trusted the wrong person, he said quietly. Claire shook her head slowly, panic and confusion twisting together inside her chest. Victor helped my father build Bennett Tech. That is what he wanted your family to believe. Ethan pulled another file onto the screen. Financial reports. Legal transfers. Hidden offshore accounts. Claire barely understood half of it, but one thing became horrifyingly clear. Victor Hale's name appeared everywhere. After your father developed the encryption software for Bennett Tech, Ethan explained, Victor began using the company to move money through shell corporations. Claire looked up sharply. My father would never knowingly help criminals. He did not know at first. Ethan's expression darkened. By the time he realized what Victor was doing, it was too late. Rain rolled down the apartment windows while Claire tried to process everything she thought she knew about her family. So what happened? She asked weakly. Ethan leaned against the counter again, exhaustion finally visible beneath his calm exterior. Your father tried to pull out of the partnership quietly. Claire swallowed hard. Victor refused. Ethan nodded once. Victor made it clear that people who leave his network lose everything. Claire suddenly remembered nights hearing her parents argue behind closed doors. Her father drinking coffee alone at 2 in the morning. The stress that slowly hollowed him out during Bennett Tech's final year. Oh my God, she whispered. Ethan watched her carefully. Your father came to me because Cross Holdings was one of the few corporations Victor could not control financially. Claire looked at him with disbelief. So you bought Bennett Tech to protect him? Ethan looked away toward the rain-covered skyline. I bought it to keep Victor from destroying your family completely. Claire's chest tightened painfully. But we still lost our house. Ethan's jaw flexed. Because your father moved company assets before the acquisition finalized. Claire frowned. Move them where? Ethan hesitated again. I do not know. You are lying. Ethan met her eyes immediately. I am protecting him. Silence crashed between them. Claire slowly realized the truth she had spent years refusing to see. Ethan Cross never ruined her family. He stepped into a disaster already happening behind the scenes. Every ounce of hatred she carried toward him suddenly felt unstable beneath her feet. Why did my father disappear now? She asked quietly. Ethan picked up the silver moon pendant from the shelf and turned it gently between his fingers. Because I think he finally found evidence that can destroy Victor Hale permanently. Claire stared at him. And now Victor is looking for it. Ethan nodded. Including your mother. Fear rushed back instantly. Claire grabbed her phone again, trying her mother's number for what felt like the 100th time tonight. Straight to voicemail. Ethan's secure phone suddenly buzzed across the counter again. He answered immediately. Marcus. Claire watched his face carefully as he listened. Send me the address. His expression hardened further. We are leaving now. He hung up. What happened? Claire asked. Ethan grabbed his coat again. Your mother's phone just pinged near an abandoned marina in Brooklyn. Claire's stomach dropped. Then let us go. Ethan looked directly at her. Claire, if Victor Hale is there, this is not safe. My mother is there. Her voice shook now with anger instead of fear. I am not staying here while strangers drag my family through the city. Ethan stepped closer suddenly. And I am not letting you walk into danger alone. The words hit harder than they should have. Claire stared at him in silence for a second too long. Ethan realized it too and stepped back slightly, his expression guarded again. Get your coat, he said quietly. 10 minutes later, the Aston Martin cut through the rain-soaked streets of Brooklyn while tension filled every inch of the car. The marina sat near the river beneath old rusted warehouse cranes and flickering dock lights. Claire's pulse pounded harder with every block they passed. Ethan parked several buildings away from the water and turned off the engine. Neither of them moved immediately. Rain hammered softly against the windshield while distant fog rolled over the dark river. Ethan finally reached into the back seat and pulled out a small flashlight. Stay close to me, he said calmly. Claire nodded once. They stepped out into the cold rain together. The marina looked almost abandoned except for one faint light glowing near the far dock office. Claire wrapped her coat tighter around herself as Ethan scanned the empty shoreline carefully. Then Claire froze completely. A familiar pale blue sweater appeared near the dock railing beside the water. Mom, she whispered. But before she could move forward, Ethan suddenly caught her arm hard enough to stop her. Claire looked up in shock, just as another figure slowly stepped out of the shadows beside her mother. Tall, gray suit, silver hair. Victor Hale smiled calmly across the rain-covered dock like he had been waiting for them the entire time. The cold rain soaked through Claire's coat as Victor Hale stepped closer beneath the dim dock lights, looking more like a respected businessman than the man Ethan described. That somehow made him more terrifying. Claire's mother stood silently beside him, pale and visibly shaken, clutching her purse tightly against her chest. Claire, Victor said warmly, almost smiling. You should not be out here tonight. Claire's pulse pounded violently. Stay away from my mother. Victor sighed softly like a disappointed relative at Thanksgiving dinner. You always were dramatic. Ethan stepped slightly in front of Claire without thinking. Victor's expression shifted the second he looked at Ethan. The warmth vanished instantly. There he is, Victor said calmly. The man who keeps ruining my plans. Ethan's voice stayed ice cold. Let Eleanor Bennett go. Claire looked sharply toward her mother. Mom, come here. But Eleanor Bennett did not move. She looked exhausted, confused, terrified. Victor placed a reassuring hand near her shoulder without touching her directly. Your mother is safe, Claire. I simply needed to talk. Ethan laughed quietly under his breath. You do not bring 6 security vehicles to a marina for conversation. Claire froze. 6. Ethan's eyes scanned the dark warehouse rooftops surrounding the dock. You did not think I came here unprepared, did you? Victor smiled faintly. And yet you still walked directly into my trap. The river wind howled across the marina while rain shimmered beneath the yellow dock lights. Claire's heart slammed harder as dark SUVs slowly appeared near the warehouse and trances behind them. Ethan remained perfectly still beside her. Calm, focused, protective. Victor looked at Claire again. Your father made a mistake, he said gently. He forgot loyalty matters more than pride. Claire shook her head. My father trusted you. Your father owed me. Victor's voice hardened slightly for the first time. Everything he built existed because I financed it. Ethan cut in immediately. You financed it so you could use Bennett tech to move illegal accounts through encrypted systems. Victor's smile disappeared completely now. Careful, Ethan. Claire suddenly realized something horrifying. My father has proof. Victor's eyes slid toward her slowly. Yes, he said quietly. Which is why tonight has become very inconvenient. Claire's mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. Claire, your father told me not to trust anyone. Tears filled her eyes. Then Victor found me before I could leave the city. Claire stepped forward instinctively. Ethan caught her wrist gently. Not yet. Victor noticed immediately. So did Claire. The way Ethan positioned himself between her and danger without hesitation. The way his grip loosened the second she looked uncomfortable. Victor gave a low, amused laugh. Interesting. Ethan's jaw tightened. Do not. The great Ethan Cross finally cares about something more than money. Victor's eyes moved toward Claire knowingly. That explains why you have been making emotional decisions lately. Claire looked up at Ethan. Emotional decisions. Ethan ignored the comment completely. You are done, Victor. Victor smiled again. No, Ethan. You are. Then Victor slowly reached into his coat pocket. Claire's entire body tensed, but Victor only pulled out a small silver flash drive. Ethan's expression changed instantly. Where did you get that? Victor twirled the drive between his fingers casually. Your favorite engineer gave it to me personally. Claire frowned. My father. Victor tilted his head slightly. Nathan Bennett understood survival better than you think. Ethan stepped forward now, real anger flashing across his face for the first time tonight. You are lying. Victor's smile widened faintly. Am I? Claire looked between them in confusion. What is on that drive? Victor's eyes settled directly on her. Everything. Rain dripped from Ethan's dark hair as tension crackled across the dock like electricity. Victor lifted the drive slightly higher. Bank accounts. Offshore transfers. Corporate bribes. His expression sharpened. Enough information to destroy half the financial elite in Manhattan. Claire's mother suddenly broke down, crying quietly beside him. Nathan wanted to expose everyone, she whispered. That is why he disappeared. Claire's stomach twisted painfully. Ethan slowly moved closer to Victor. Give me the drive. Victor laughed softly. You still think this ends with business, Ethan? Then his face darkened completely. This stopped being business when you fell in love with the wrong girl. Silence crashed across the dock. Claire's breath caught instantly. Ethan froze beside her. Victor looked almost entertained now. Oh, she did not know? Claire turned toward Ethan slowly. Rain shimmered across his face while his blue eyes locked onto hers. For the first time all night, Ethan Cross looked completely exposed. No billionaire mask. No cold control. Just truth. Victor smiled faintly in the silence. That explains why you have been willing to burn your empire down for her. Claire's pulse thundered in her ears as she stared at Ethan. Ethan stepped toward her carefully, never looking away. Claire, he said quietly. But before he could say another word, headlights suddenly exploded across the marina from the far entrance. Multiple black vehicles surged onto the dock at once while voices shouted through the storm. Victor's calm expression vanished instantly. Ethan grabbed Claire's hand without hesitation. Run.